America is massive, over 19,000 cities and towns. Some are booming, thriving, and attracting newcomers every single day. But then, there are the other ones. The cities with reputations so bad, challenges so heavy, or conditions so strange that most people pack up and leave the second they can. And yet, people still live there. In this video, we're diving into 7 American cities where almost nobody wants to live. From decaying Rust Belt hubs to crime-ridden urban sprawls, these are the places people warn you about. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll be rethinking that cheap house you saw on Zillow. Stick with me, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss future countdowns. And let's jump right in, and for good reason. Once a thriving steel town, Gary has suffered one of the harshest economic declines in the US. Back in the 1960s, Gary was booming. Steel mills were running 24/7, jobs were plentiful, and the city had nearly 80,000 residents. Fast forward to today, and Gary's population has plummeted to entire neighborhoods are full of abandoned homes, factories sit rusting, and the local economy never really recovered after the steel industry collapsed. Crime? Yeah, Gary struggles. The violent crime rate is more than double the national average. Property crime is high too. Some parts of town feel like ghost neighborhoods, where boarded-up houses outnumber the ones with people actually living in them. For newcomers, that's an instant red flag. Then there's poverty. Nearly 30% of Gary residents live below the poverty line. Schools are underfunded, infrastructure is crumbling, and opportunities for younger generations are extremely limited. So why does anyone stay? Surprisingly, there are reasons. Housing in Gary is dirt cheap. You can buy a house for under $20,000, sometimes less. Some people see it as an opportunity to own property, even if it comes with major risks. There's also a sense of community. People who've lived in Gary their whole lives often refuse to leave, clinging to the pride of what the city once was. And here's the kicker. Gary is close to Chicago. Some residents commute for work while living with a much lower cost of living. Still, most people look at the crime, the poverty, and the lack of opportunity and say, no thanks. Would you take a chance on a $15,000 house in Gary? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be checking them out. And hey, if you're finding this video eye-opening so far, hit like, it really helps the channel grow. Camden is just across the river from Philadelphia, but the difference between the two cities is night and day. Philly has history, sports, and a thriving downtown. Camden, it's notorious for crime, poverty, and decay. For decades, Camden has ranked as one of the most dangerous cities in America, and that reputation hasn't exactly made people line up to move there. So what's the deal? Well, Camden was once a bustling industrial hub, home to companies like RCA and Campbell's Soup. But as industries left, jobs disappeared, and the city fell into a spiral of poverty and crime. Today, about 35% of Camden's residents live below the poverty line, and unemployment hovers well above the national average. Crime has long been Camden's biggest headline. At its worst, Camden's murder rate was more than 10 times the national average. Although things have improved in recent years thanks to police reforms and community efforts, the stigma is still there. Outsiders see Camden as dangerous, rundown, and unstable, a city where opportunity is scarce and risks are high. Schools? They're chronically underfunded. Infrastructure? Crumbling. Abandoned houses and vacant lots dominate entire neighborhoods. For people considering a move, all of this is more than enough to push Camden to the bottom of the list. So why does anyone live there? Like Gary, affordability plays a role. Rent and housing are cheaper than in nearby Philadelphia. Plus, Camden is close to jobs in Philly. Some people simply see it as the only affordable way to live near a major city. And despite the challenges, Camden has community pride. Local organizations, artists, and activists are working hard to revive neighborhoods and create safe spaces. But let's be real. For most Americans, Camden is not an appealing place to live. The combination of crime, poverty, and lack of opportunity overshadows the city's efforts to rebuild. Picture this. You find a super cheap apartment, but outside your window are boarded-up homes, empty streets, and constant sirens. That's Camden, a city fighting for its survival but still weighed down by decades of struggle. Would you take the risk to live in Camden for cheap rent and Philly access? Comment your answer down below. And while you're at it, don't forget to subscribe. We've got even more shocking cities to cover. Detroit is a city that needs no introduction. Once the proud capital of America's auto industry, it was known as the Motor City, home to Ford, General Motors, and Chrysler. Back in the mid-20th century, Detroit was booming. Nearly 2 million people lived there, and the city symbolized American industry at its peak. Fast forward to today, and Detroit tells a very different story. The population has plummeted to around 30,000. Entire neighborhoods are filled with abandoned houses and overgrown lots. The decline of the auto industry, combined with decades of mismanagement and economic hardship, left Detroit bankrupt in 2013, the largest municipal bankruptcy in U.S. history. And then there's crime. For years, Detroit consistently ranked among the most violent cities in America. While crime rates have gone down in recent years, the reputation lingers. Ask most Americans about Detroit, and you'll hear words like dangerous, abandoned, and crime-ridden. That's hardly the kind of branding that draws newcomers. Add in unemployment, poverty, and a struggling school system, and you've got a recipe for a city most people avoid. Poverty rates hover around 30%, and services like public transit and infrastructure lag far behind other major cities. So why do people still live in Detroit, or even move there? For some, it's opportunity. Housing in Detroit is shockingly cheap. You can buy entire homes for under $50,000, and developers see Detroit as a blank slate for rebuilding. Artists, entrepreneurs, and risk-takers are drawn to its affordability and potential for growth. There are even signs of revitalization downtown, new businesses, sports arenas, and cultural hubs. But for many outsiders, the risks outweigh the rewards. The thought of crime, abandoned streets, and struggling schools keeps Detroit near the bottom of most people's dream move lists. Imagine moving to Detroit for cheap housing, only to find your next-door neighbors are empty lots, burned-out houses, and a constant reminder of the city's collapse. It's a gamble. Some see the potential, most just see the danger. What about you? Would you roll the dice on Detroit's future, or stay far away? Let me know in the comments, and hey, if you're enjoying this countdown so far, hit that like button. It helps the channel grow and keeps videos like this coming. St. Louis is famous for its Gateway Arch, blues music, and baseball. But when it comes to livability, the city has been losing residents for decades, and many Americans say it's one of the last places they'd ever want to move. Here's why. St. Louis has one of the highest violent crime rates in the country. Year after year, it shows up on lists of America's most dangerous cities. Homicide rates are consistently several times the national average. Entire neighborhoods struggle with gang activity, drugs, and poverty. For families looking for safety, that's an immediate deal breaker. The population has dropped dramatically from over 850,000 in 1950 to fewer than 300,000 today. That kind of exodus leaves behind abandoned homes, struggling businesses, and declining services. Schools are underfunded, infrastructure is aging, and job opportunities are limited outside a few sectors. For newcomers, that means fewer reasons to settle here. Of course, not every corner of St. Louis is bleak. The city still has cultural gems, world-class museums, sports teams, and a rich history. Some neighborhoods are even undergoing gentrification, attracting younger crowds with trendy bars, coffee shops, and loft apartments. But step a few blocks away, and you're back in areas where poverty and crime dominate daily life. So why do people stay? For many, it's family roots. St. Louis has a strong sense of community, and those who've grown up there often stick around despite the risks. Housing is also affordable compared to many U.S. cities. You can find spacious homes for a fraction of what you'd pay in Chicago or New York. Still, the city's reputation is hard to ignore. For most outsiders, when they hear St. Louis, they think crime first, culture second. And that makes it a tough sell for anyone thinking of moving. Picture yourself considering a move, and the first thing your friends say is, "Be careful, St. Louis is dangerous." That's the reality the city faces every day. Would you take the risk for affordable housing and culture, or would crime statistics scare you off? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more countdowns like this. We've still got 3 more cities to cover, and trust me, they're even rougher. Baltimore is often called Charm City, but for many Americans that nickname feels ironic. Sure, it's got the Inner Harbor, historic neighborhoods, and a rich cultural legacy, but when it comes to livability, Baltimore has a reputation that scares off a lot of people. Let's talk crime first. Baltimore has one of the highest murder rates in the nation, regularly ranking near the top, alongside cities like St. Louis. Violent crime is a daily reality in many neighborhoods, and drug activity has plagued the city for decades. For families considering a move, safety is often the #1 factor, and in Baltimore, the numbers aren't comforting. Economically, the city has also struggled. Manufacturing jobs that once supported the middle class are gone. Poverty rates hover above 20%, and many schools face chronic underfunding. Abandoned row houses line block after block, giving entire neighborhoods a ghost town vibe. Infrastructure, aging, Public trust in government? Fragile. But here's the twist. Baltimore isn't all bleak. Parts of the city are thriving. The harbor area is bustling with shops, restaurants, and tourists. Johns Hopkins University and hospital provide world-class education and healthcare. There's also a vibrant art scene and plenty of history to explore. For some, that balance of grit and culture is worth it. Housing is another draw. Compared to nearby Washington, D.C., Baltimore is far cheaper. Some professionals live in Baltimore and commute to D.C., taking advantage of lower rents and mortgages. And for longtime residents, community pride runs deep. Ask a Baltimore local, and they'll tell you the city's spirit is stronger than its statistics. Still, outsiders see the headlines: shootings, poverty, and boarded-up homes. That image overshadows the charm and keeps Baltimore near the bottom of relocation wish lists. Imagine moving to a row house because it's affordable, but every night you hear sirens and worry about safety. That's the trade-off many face in Baltimore. What about you? Would you risk living in Baltimore for cheap housing and culture, or does the crime scare you off completely? Drop your thoughts below. And hey, if you're still with me in this countdown, hit that like button. It tells me you want more videos just like this. If you think St. Louis is rough, just cross the Mississippi River into East St. Louis, a city with one of the most notorious reputations in America. While technically in Illinois, East St. Louis is often lumped together with its larger neighbor because of how intertwined their histories are. But ask anyone in the Midwest, and they'll tell you, East St. Louis is in a league of its own. Here's why. For decades, East St. Louis has been plagued by extreme poverty, crumbling infrastructure, and some of the highest crime rates in the country. In fact, it's often ranked among the most dangerous small cities in the U.S. The population has plummeted from over 80,000 in the 1950s to less than 20,000 today. That kind of collapse leaves scars: abandoned houses, shuttered schools, and streets in disrepair. The city's financial struggles run deep. With such a small tax base, basic services are underfunded, police departments are stretched thin, schools lack resources, and public utilities often can't keep up. For outsiders thinking about moving in, that's a red flag the size of the Gateway Arch. Then there's crime. Residents report frequent gun violence, drug activity, and property crime. At its worst, East St. Louis has had homicide rates more than 17 times the national average. Imagine moving somewhere and realizing the odds of becoming a crime victim are among the highest in the country. That's the reality here. So why does anyone stay? For some, it's family ties. Generations of families have lived in East St. Louis, and leaving isn't always an option. Housing is also incredibly cheap. Sometimes you can buy a house for the cost of a used car. And despite the city's struggles, there's still community pride. Festivals, churches, and local organizations work hard to give residents reasons to stay hopeful. But let's be honest, for most people, East St. Louis is the kind of place they'd avoid at all costs. The risks outweigh the rewards, and the city's reputation alone keeps outsiders away. Would you take the gamble on cheap housing here, or is East St. Louis an instant nope for you? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget, subscribe so you don't miss the final city on this list. Trust me, it's a big one. Cleveland, Ohio once stood tall as a hub of industry, music, and sports. Home to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Cleveland Browns, and Lake Erie views, it should, on paper, be a great place to live. But here's the truth. For decades, Cleveland has struggled with a reputation that keeps many Americans from even considering a move there. Let's start with the economy. Cleveland was a manufacturing powerhouse, but like so many Rust Belt cities, jobs left and never fully came back. Entire neighborhoods fell into decline, and poverty took root. Today, about 30% of Cleveland residents live below the poverty line, and unemployment remains stubbornly high in many communities. For families, that makes stability hard to find. Then there's crime. Cleveland often ranks among the top 20 most dangerous cities in the U.S. Violent crime, especially in certain neighborhoods, is a serious concern. Add in property crime, and newcomers quickly see red flags. Safety, or lack of it, is one of the biggest reasons people hesitate to call Cleveland home. Housing is both a blessing and a curse. Yes, it's cheap, shockingly cheap compared to other big cities. You can buy a house in Cleveland for under $100,000, sometimes far less. But affordable doesn't always mean desirable. Many of those homes sit in struggling neighborhoods, where schools are underfunded and public services lag. The bargain price tag comes with trade-offs that most people aren't willing to make. Still, Cleveland isn't without bright spots. Downtown has seen revitalization with new restaurants, arenas, and cultural hubs. The Cleveland Clinic is world-renowned, and the city's music and sports culture run deep. For die-hard locals, Cleveland pride is real. They'll tell you the city's struggles don't define it, and in some ways, that's true. But here's the harsh reality. Outsiders see the poverty, the crime, and the decay first. For most, the risks overshadow the rewards. Cleveland is a city with history, grit, and resilience, but not one many people are rushing to move into. So what do you think? Would you give Cleveland a shot for cheap housing and culture, or stay away because of its reputation? Let me know in the comments, and if you've made it this far, smash that like button and subscribe so you don't miss more deep dives into America's most surprising cities. And there you have it, 7 American cities where almost nobody wants to live. From Gary's abandoned steel mills to Cleveland's struggling neighborhoods, these places show us what happens when jobs vanish, crime rises, and opportunity slips away. Yet, as we've seen, people still choose to stay. Whether it's for cheap housing, family ties, or a stubborn kind of pride, these cities keep going, even when the rest of the country writes them off. Now, here's the big question. Would you ever move to one of these cities? Maybe the low cost of living tempts you. Maybe you see potential where others only see problems. Or maybe you're thinking, absolutely not. I like my sidewalks without potholes and my nights without sirens. Either way, I want to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and let's start a conversation. If you enjoyed this countdown, do me a favor, hit that like button. It tells YouTube this is the kind of content worth sharing. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications. We've got more wild lists coming your way. Forgotten ghost towns, dangerous places, and maybe even a few cities secretly giving away houses. You won't want to miss it. America is full of contradictions. Some cities rise, others fall, but every one of them tells a story. And sometimes the cities people avoid the most are the ones with the most to teach us. Thanks for watching, and until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video.